Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Light Up the Kitchen. Today, let's talk about cast iron cookware. I've received a lot of requests from people asking me to make videos about the different kinds of cast iron and carbon steel cookware that I use and how I season and maintain them. I plan to make a separate video about the different cast iron and carbon steel cookware that I have, the pros and cons of each of them. Today I'll only be talking about how I season and maintain my cast iron cookware. So there are two ways to season cast iron pans, either in the oven or on the stovetop. Let's start with this cast iron griddle, which is partially rusted. The first step would be to take an abrasive scrubber and some dish soap and scrub the pan really well. Ideally, the process is the same, whether you're trying to season a brand new cast iron pan or an old or rusted pan, the method is the same. You want to scrub the pan really well with an abrasive scrubber and dish soap multiple times so you can get all the grime and rust off the pan. Once that is done, you want to take the washed cast iron pan and place it on the stovetop. I don't even bother wiping the pan down. I just place it directly on the stovetop and then I heat it on low heat until all the moisture in the pan has evaporated. You want to make sure the pan is completely dry before you move to the next step. You want to make sure that even the edges of the pan are completely dry, and this can take a few minutes. The next step is to apply a very thin coat of oil on the pan. So the oil you use will depend on what you have on hand. Ideally, it's best to use oils that have a high smoke point. So vegetable shortening, avocado oil, peanut oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, any of these oils are very good for seasoning cast iron pans. Unrefined oils are a poor choice for seasoning cast iron pans because they have fairly low smoke points. For example, extra virgin olive oil, virgin coconut oil, all of these have low smoke points and should not be used. So to apply the thin coat of oil, it's best to use a cloth rag because it doesn't leave lint behind. Paper towels or anything that leaves lint behind on the rough pan are not a good idea. You want to make sure that the coat of oil is very, very thin because if you have excess oil on the pan, it will leave a gummy residue after the pan is seasoned. So make sure that you wipe off all the excess oil really well. Once you've applied the thin coat of oil, the pan is now ready to be seasoned in the oven. So today I'm seasoning multiple pans at once. The temperature at which you preheat the oven for seasoning the cast iron pans depends on the smoke point of the oil that you're using to season the pan. Ideally, the oven temperature should be about 25 degrees higher than whatever is the smoke point of the oil. For example, if you're using canola oil, most canola oils have a smoke point of around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So you should be preheating your oven to either 425 or 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Today I'm using avocado oil, which has a smoke point of 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and my oven goes all the way to 525, so I will be preheating my oven at 525 degrees. If your oven doesn't go higher than the smoke point of the oil you're using, don't worry about it too much. Basically just crank your oven up to the maximum temperature that it can go to. And one thing to be careful about are pans that have plastic, silicone or wood handles. So if your pan has a handle that's not metal and it can be removed, then it's best to remove it before you season the pan. If it has a non-metal handle that cannot be removed, then wrap it in a wet rag or paper towel and then wrap that again with aluminum foil before you place it in the oven. Once the oven has preheated, place your pans in the oven and bake for about 1 hour. So while the pans are seasoning in the oven, there can be a fairly strong smell especially if you're seasoning your cast iron pan for the first time. So I would open a few windows just to air out the smell. Once the 1 hour is up, turn off the oven and leave the cast iron pans in the oven to cool along with the oven. This can take several hours. Once the pans have cooled in the oven and you take it out, the pans should look something like this. At this point, the pan has one coat of seasoning on it and is ready for you to start cooking with it. But if you would like to add a few additional coats of seasoning to the pan, then you would essentially just repeat the process of adding a very thin coat of oil, preheating the oven, baking the pan in the oven for an hour, and then letting it cool in the oven. You would repeat this process as many times as you want coats of seasoning on the pan. So after about 3 coats of seasoning in the oven, this is what the pans that I was seasoning look like. So this is how cast iron pans can be seasoned in the oven. It's a fairly long process, but is easy to do. Now let's take a look at how to season cast iron pans on the stovetop, which is a much faster way to season the pans, but is a little harder to do. So here is a cast iron pan that has a few rust spots on the inside. So the initial part of the process is the same. You take an abrasive scrubber and dish soap and scrub the pan multiple times until it's completely clean. And once you have rinsed the pan clean after scrubbing it, you place it on the stovetop and heat it on low heat until the pan is completely dry. After the pan is completely dry, add a few drops of oil to the pan and using a rag cloth, spread the oil around in the pan until it's a very thin coat. At that point, just leave the stove on and wait for the pan to heat up, and you start seeing a few wisps of smoke. Once you see the wisps of smoke rising from the pan, let the pan continue to heat until the layer of oil inside the pan looks like it's dry. Essentially, you're trying to carbonize the oil onto the cast iron pan, which is what seasons the pan. So this process can be fairly intense in the sense that there can be a lot of smoke. So unless you have a really strong vent hood, I wouldn't attempt this method because it can trigger the smoke alarm in your kitchen if you have one. So after a few coats of applying oil and smoking it on the stovetop, this is what the cast iron pan looks like. Now that we've looked at how to season a new or old cast iron or carbon steel pan, let's look at how to clean them. So there's 2 ways in which I clean carbon steel or cast iron pans, and it just depends on how dirty the pan has gotten. So this here is a carbon steel paella pan that I used to roast some vegetables. So all I do when the pan isn't too dirty or doesn't have too much stuck on food is I just put some salt on it and then use a rag and basically just scrape off all the oil and stuck on food bits. Salt is pretty abrasive and will pull off all the food and oil without ruining the underlying seasoning of the pan. So this is a good way to clean pans in which you've made pancakes, crepes, anything where the pan isn't too dirty. So once you've scraped off all the food bits and the oil, you just dust the pan off, throw the salt in the trash, and you're done. So after I've dusted all the salt off the pan, this is what the pan looks like, and you can just store it away and it's ready for its next use. Now let's look at how to clean a pan that has a lot more stuck on food on it. This here is a carbon steel wok that I used to make a curry. As you can see, there's a lot of stuck on gravy that's still in the wok. So how I would clean this is you use some warm water straight from the tap. You can soak the pan in the warm water for 30 seconds to a minute if you like, but I don't even usually bother doing that. Just swish the water around in the pan. And then I use something called a chainmail. This is easily available on Amazon. It's basically made of stainless steel. It's not too abrasive on the pan, and this can easily be used and cleaned in the dishwasher. So basically you just use that chainmail, put some water in the pan, and basically scrub the pan with the chainmail, which will take all the stuck on food bits off the pan. Just keep doing this multiple times with, change the water out a few times until the pan is completely clean. So if you don't have a chainmail, or if you don't want to buy one, you can just use a regular abrasive scrubber. The main thing is to not use soap. You just want to use water and a scrubber and clean out the pan. So after a few rounds of scrubbing and rinsing, this is what the clean pan looks like. Now you want to take the rinsed and clean pan and place it on the stove. I don't even bother wiping the pan. I basically just put it on the stove, turn on the heat, and then you want to heat the pan until it is completely dry. You want to make sure that it's dry around the edges, the middle, everywhere. And once the pan is completely dry like this, you want to put a few drops of oil in the pan and take a rag of some sort, and then you want to spread that oil evenly within the pan. I'm doing it without a mitten on because I'm used to doing this by now and I'm fairly careful, but initially I used to end up burning my hands a lot. So the safest way to do this is to wear mittens of some sort and do this. Once you get used to it and you get a hang of it, then I guess you'll be able to do it without mittens. But again, the safer way to do it is with mittens on. And you essentially just want to keep spreading the oil on the pan until it carbonizes onto the pan. Again, this causes a lot of smoke. So it's best to have your vent hood turned on or open some windows so that you don't trigger your smoke alarms. Once the oil has carbonized on the pan, you can turn off the flame, let the pan cool down, and it's ready to be stored away. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave comments under this video, and I will try my best to answer them as soon as I can. Thank you. Bye-bye.